First, we'll start with introductions from each panelist. Then the flow of questions will go, if you have a question, you can use the raise hand button or you can write it in the chat. I'll call on you and then you can unmute yourself to ask the question. And so going into introductions of each panelist, if you could say the colleges that you've attended, your fields of study, and your current place of work, if you are, or wherever it is that you currently are, if you're in school. So we'll start in alphabetical order by last name. So we'll start with Diana, then go to Inita, and then Christina.
Awesome. Story of my life. My last name, I always end up going first. So I'm actually a fellow Gator as well. So go Gators. I had to resist the urge to say go Gators when when I found out it was Gator. So I went to undergrad in 2010. So I graduated in 2014 from the University of Florida with a degree in industrial and systems engineering. I started with computer science, really thought I was going to be a developer and change the world via software, and then realized I was more of a big picture thinker. So I graduated, went to work at Procter & Gamble and Apple, did a lot of operations work, super cool, working in like big matrix organizations with cool products. And then during the pandemic, I decided I wanted to go to grad school. I'd been toying with the idea of an MBA. So I had a GMAT score that was good enough and had been shelved for a while with life happening, and finally took the plunge and applied. So I got my MBA from Kellogg at Northwestern University. So spent some time in Chicago, and I work now for a small private equity firm boutique out of Canada called Capficiency. And I am a private equity ops associate running 2 Microsoft businesses. So really a whole loop around and a very different path than I thought I originally was going to take when I was an undergrad. So happy to answer any questions around application process, when it's right to apply, should I even go to grad school? I think I toyed with that decision matrix a couple of times, and I'm very, very, very glad that I pulled the trigger and had an incredible experience in grad school. So that's me.
All right, good evening. My name is Dr. Inita Knox. I received my undergraduate from Florida A&M University in criminal justice. Took some time to work in the juvenile justice field as an educator in the detention center in jail. Definitely an eye-opener, an opportunity for me to kind of piece together my undergraduate while I was pursuing my master's from the University of Central Florida, where I received a master's in applied learning and instruction. So really being able to look at the criminal justice system and more so focus on correctional education for incarcerated and formerly incarcerated youth. That wasn't enough. I too, like Diana, is a big picture thinker. I see the puzzle, but I'm really interested in the pieces and how they fit together, who's in charge, and more so looking at governance of policies and procedures for education. So I decided to pursue a doctorate in educational program development, where I recently graduated from the University of South Florida. Currently, I work as a training and development specialist for a nonprofit, and I build online learning.
Hi, everyone. My name is Christina. I'm not as fabulous as my other 2 panelists. I went to Emory University for undergrad. I graduated in 2020. I got a bachelor's in English and history, so very stereotypical liberal arts degree. I took a total of 3 years off before matriculating into law school. I did a year of service with the Mayor Court in Orlando, and then I worked as a legal assistant at the state attorney's office, also in Orlando, and I am a first-year law student. Don't ask me what type of law I want to practice. I do not know.
Very nice. So thank you all for introducing yourself. So let's start with some questions. If you don't be afraid to jump in, you're welcome to raise your hand or write in the chat. I know we have students interested in law school here today, or maybe just general graduate programs. Who would like to be the first question? So I see you raise your hand, Alejandra.
I was trying to find the reaction button.
Oh.
Yes, I do have a question for you, Christina. I am a criminal justice major, psychology minor. I plan on graduating in May of next year, and I would like to attend law school. I did attend a law school panel at my university, Florida Atlantic University, and they were explaining to me that some of the important steps that you want to take when you try to apply or when you're beginning your application process is, of course, with your LSAT score and your GPA. However, what was it for you in your application process that really felt that was most important? Was it, your personal statement? Also for your LSATs, how did you go about approaching to study your LSATs? I don't know if you might have taken a program or read books. And I know you mentioned you worked in the state attorney's office in Orlando. How was that for you? And do you think, helped you learn more about law before you finally decided to attend law school, especially now in your 1L? Do you think that some of the strategies or some of the procedures you might have learned working as a legal assistant has helped you kind of maybe like launch yourself and when you're, compared to your peers?
My mind counted 3 questions, so I'm going to try to remember all of them. The first one, because I'm not on the side of admissions, I don't know personally what set my application apart and which was the strongest component. But I went into the process believing that my entire applications should be coherent and each piece should work together. I was given advice that like each piece should tell the story, but it doesn't necessarily need to be repetitive, but it should give the admission committee the best view into who you are. So in terms of like studying for the LSAT, it took me a while to figure out which way was the best way for me to study. Originally, I just bought like prep books and I said, I'm just gonna bang it out and just study that way. Epic fail. I eventually got into a course. I used the LSAT Demon. Highly recommend them. They're kind of like a no nonsense, no excuses, you need to study. And they really prioritize practicing, which is the best way to like learn the LSAT. It's a standardized exam, which means there will probably be questions that just repeat itself over and over. And you can just anticipate the answers at that point. So any prep company, I believe that you end up with should be telling you upfront that this is a very learnable exam, it's standardized, and therefore there should be just a method in which you approach it that you just know you should be able to see this type of question, and this is the response that you take out of it. In terms of that third question, not necessarily. I don't think working at the state attorney's office gave me a boost. I'm taking contracts towards legal analysis, legislation and regulation, and then like a career class. None of those had anything to do with being a legal assistant. You're basically just learning the laws. Kind of 1L year is kind of 1L meaning that first year of law school. 1L year is kind of law 101. And at the state attorney's office, I was basically just a glorified legal assistant, just inputting criminal traffic cases into the computer. So I wasn't really learning anything substantial. So in terms of that third question, I would say don't worry about not having legal experience because you're not an attorney, and therefore, I don't want to say no one truly knows the law like that. You can watch shows, you can pay attention to the news, you can have a good concept of what the law is, but you shouldn't worry too much about trying to figure out the law before you get to law school. The law school is supposed to teach you the law and teach you how to actually apply it. So I'm not sure if that answered all your questions. Oh, I didn't miss anything. But yeah, in terms of the application, every component, basically I want to emphasize that each component of the application is very, very important. Your LSAT is very important, your GPA is very important. And if your GPA is already set in stone, use the other aspects of your application to just further enhance that you are a competitive applicant. That's what I did. I didn't really like my GPA, so I knew I had to go hard for the LSAT. And in my personal statement, I just made sure that it was like perfect, read it over many, many times, tried different topics, but I wanted to make sure that nothing in my application, if there was a weaker end, that all the other components spoke to who I was as a person and that I presented myself as a person who wasn't just saying, well, I don't really know what I want to do. Let me just apply to law school. I had to come with this idea like, okay, I know exactly, I may not know exactly what type of field I want to do, but I have given this thought. So I wanted my application to present that so the actual admissions committee.
Yes, thank you. You answered all my questions perfectly. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions so far? Elizabeth, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So my question is for, I guess, all the panelists. In terms of what was the factors or things that you guys were thinking about when you made the decision to either go straight into grad school or law school, or instead like take a gap year, like go straight into a job or working? Just because I personally want to go to law school or grad school, but I also want to take a break from education a little bit. So I guess what are the pros and cons that you were thinking about making that decision to go straight into it or to take a break?
I can go first. So I think I always knew I wanted to do something more business related because I had done like the technical engineering part. I did have the option. So for Gator Engineering, you could apply to a UF MBA and the School of Engineering would pay for it, which was very tempting to go straight into my MBA, straight out of engineering school. And I think the reason I chose not to do it in that particular moment was because I wanted to diversify my college experience, right? I wanted to, I've been in Gainesville for so long. I didn't want to spend another 2 years. So I think maybe a similar sentiment of like, I want to take a break from being in school. So I think that was a big push. And I had a really cool job lined up that I was excited to go do. So it wasn't like what I was trading off to go to school also felt like it was something that was a good fit for me at the time. I continued to put off going to grad school because I kept getting like job opportunities that were really cool. I had the chance to go travel, do an expat assignment in Panama. And I was like, maybe I'll go to grad school afterwards. Then I, got recruited by a different company. And I was like, actually, I want to go see what that is. And so I think the decision becomes very personal, right? It is like the gist of it. Going through like the prep for a GMAT while working an incredibly demanding job was grueling and took a lot of maturity to tell my friends like, no, I can't take that weekend trip to the Cape because I actually have to go study for my GMAT, right? So like being ultra focused and ultra organized was, I think, like a trade-off that you're coming off of academia, like academic thinking, into I've been working for so long now, all of a sudden I have to figure out how to learn again and how to test and take tests and like strategies for test taking and standardized testing. So I think like that was a big trade-off at the beginning for me when I was thinking about the GMAT specifically. On the flip side, having gone through business school, which I think is different maybe than other grad school programs, and I can't really speak to other ones, but having the experience that I had, the work experience, made me feel like I understood conceptually what was being taught in business school much more effectively because I had tangible examples of the workplace that I could say, oh, this is how this concept would apply in my work experience previously, or, oh, I wish I had known that when I was in this scenario at work. So I think for business school specifically, there's like a sweet spot, right? Like I think the like 2 to 3 year mark, actually some business schools won't even let you apply unless you have at least X number of years of experience. So it really depends on the program as well. But I think at the end, it's like a very personal decision. And if you choose one way or the other, you have to be really clear on what the trade-offs are. For me, the trade-offs were always like a cool opportunity that I wasn't willing to forego. But then it was tough to carve out time and be super organized to make sure that I had an application that was cohesive. And like I had to write essays and get recommendations. Like it is a lot of work and effort to apply, just to apply. Honestly, it's like a part-time job on top of your full-time job if you choose to do it at the same time. So that, I think that gives you some perspective.
For me, leaving undergrad, I went straight into my master's program at UCF, and I thought I was going to lose the momentum. So I figured let's just keep the ball rolling. I started to study a topic looking at correctional education, and I felt like I was missing a piece. And that piece, because my background was not in education, was the educational piece. And so I wanted to really figure out how was I going to be able to impact the policies, procedures, kind of the system as a whole if I don't fully understand the system. So I needed to be in the system. So I worked part-time for the school district at the detention center and jail while receiving my master's. And I was able to implement some of those things in real time, which I thought was very insightful. But more importantly, I was able to work on projects and look at papers and research that really made me look at the scope a lot larger than what I had been looking at it, which made me think about my doctorate program. But I took a year between my master's and my doctorate program, and I full transparent, I said no. Don't sign me up. I don't want to go. I think a master's is good for me. But again, looking big picture, I am research, policy, procedure, governance. What are those things that build the system? And how do they come about? So I took the year to really figure out what I wanted my specialty to be. I knew that my passion was incarcerated youth, but I needed to figure out exactly what I wanted to do and how I wanted to approach it. I think that 1 year gave me exactly that. I continued to work for the school district. I had a lot of conversations. I did a lot of stuff with the county. I volunteered. My mentor was still a guidance counselor at the high school. So I was able to talk to a lot of people about kids reentering after incarceration and what did that look like. And so that helped me when applying to my doctorate program. And it gave me those real world experiences about why I was passionate and what I intended my research to be, which I think worked out really well for me. And I think it was the best decision to take the year, because what I learned is for people who just go in, they have a hard time deciphering, what do I want to research? And then you're kind of wasting time, or you're taking too long of a time because you haven't really thought about it. So if you need to take the time and mentally decompress and figure out exactly what you want to do, by all means, I would encourage that. And if you're like, go full throttle, then roll with it. But time management and having boundaries and really being focused and willing to put yourself out there to get all that you can in the experience is extremely important.
And then to just jump on that last point, the trend for law school, more often than not, people have taken some years off. So I feel like beforehand we used to go straight through, but now it's common to see people taking 1 or 2, 3 years. So I agree with her, like, do what works best for you. For me, I knew I wanted to go to law school, but I had spent most of my time in undergrad volunteering at like at schools in like the local Atlanta area. So I started to develop a small little itch to become a teacher. And in my mind, I was like, okay, I know I want to be an attorney, but I never wanted to have that, oh, what if? What if I was meant to be a teacher? What if I was meant for a different career? So I told myself, let me just take a year or 2 or 3 to just like have that time to just explore that field. I'm really grateful that I did, because once I got there, I realized I'm not meant to be a teacher. So now I'm in law school knowing that I made the correct decision, and I just got that itch scratched. So if you know good and well if you want to go into this program or this program, or maybe you're like me and you're like, okay, in the back of my mind, I've heard about this type of career. Let me see if I can find an opportunity that's somewhat similar. That way you can just test it out, because sometimes you don't really know all that career entails until you actually get there. So gap years are usually, or I can say they're most beneficial to test out the waters, to see if there's something out there that you'd probably be best suited for. But if you just know good and well, if you want to do this, then there is no shame in that. There's no hurt in that. And if anything, you'll just be on the ball. You'll be younger when you graduate. I guess that's a benefit.
Thank you so much. That was really insightful. Thank you.
Do we happen to have any new questions? If not, it's okay. I do have some questions that we were able to collect prior to the session that I can ask, but I do actually have a question for you, Inita. You know, Inita serves on our selection committee for our graduate school scholarship, and she would have an interesting perspective as a selection committee member. So I'm curious if you happen to have any do's and don'ts tips for applications or interviews relating, I mean, it can be related to scholarships or it can just be general tips that you might want to suggest.
Okay. I would say make sure that your application is completed in its entirety. You don't want to leave room for guessing or questions that could have been answered if you had completely filled out the application. Additionally, I've noticed, not just on the panel, but in conversation, mentoring other students, that we're not taking advantage of the Career Center on our campus that can help you with your resumes and writing essays. So I would definitely encourage you to utilize those resources, making sure that you're stating what you're doing when you're volunteering and how long was it, and highlighting those leadership roles that you took. Along with your essay, making it cohesive. You know, as I read, I want to see big picture, you know, that you have thought about what you want to do and that you have started taking steps in preparation for that. You're not going to have it all figured out. No one has it all figured out, but you have some idea of what you want to do, and you've been working towards that. And I think that that makes a great application, and being willing to share your story. That question is meant for you to build on each other and put the pieces of the puzzle together. So we're reading, you know, that you're interested in law school and that you've been able to work as a legal assistant and do all of these things. But what does that mean to you? And how do you plan on impacting the community because you're going to be afforded this opportunity? Yep, that's about it. I think that wraps it up.
Do you all happen to have any advice on test taking for graduate school, like entrance exams to get accepted into a program?
For me, I would say practice, practice, practice. Practice makes perfect. Practice in test similar conditions. Like there's theoretically, if you had all the time in the world, we'd all get perfect scores on the LSAT, but that's not the way the test is administered. So that's not the way you should study. Time yourself. If you get an answer wrong, review it. Don't just say, "Oh, okay, I know their answer. Okay, move on." Like actually dissect why you got the answer wrong. What was your mindset going into the question? Why are the other questions incorrect? Why is the correct answer correct? It may take some time. You may go through it fast, but just give yourself some grace up front. I think that's something that I didn't do. I was like, "Oh, I'm going to study for 3 months because everyone studies for 3 months, and then I'm going to be done." But it took me a little bit longer, and originally I feel like I bit myself down for that. I was like, "Oh, I'm taking too long studying," but now that I'm on the other side of it, I'm just like, I could study for way more if need be, just to get that score, because it's worth it in the end. So I would just say give yourself some grace, put the time in, but then also have quality time spent studying. Don't study for 8 hours if you're not really going to truly focus and you're not truly going to put in the time to review, because then you're wasting time. And you can't get that time back. So if you're actually going to study, even if just 30 minutes of just a couple of questions could be worthwhile compared to 7 hours of you constantly checking your phone or on the computer while you're studying. Just break it down, self-discipline, be motivated, be committed, and take it one step at a time. But practice, practice, practice.
I wanted to just ask really quickly, Christina, and this is for all, because you're all taking entrance exams, but I know when we did a medical school Q&A, it was really helpful to students as to what they use. You know, some people, you know, courses are expensive. People listen to everybody, and it's not always the best advice, you know, in terms of study aids, what you guys would recommend.
I think so. I'll build on what Christina said. I have a generic answer here because I really just did the test books. It's like knowing your studying style and what your gaps are and what you're good at. Like I have my whole life just been a good test taker because I identify the patterns in the questions and practice so much so that I'm like not even thinking. I'm like, oh, these are the inputs and these are the outputs to this type of question. And so I knew that for me, it was more a game of doing every single type of question 700 times so that I could identify the patterns, because that's how I test take, than sitting in a classroom setting with like help. So I ate multiple years back of GMAT sample exams, right? Until I was able to understand what was the structure. So I think being self-aware and giving myself grace in that if I didn't get it the first 150 times I tested that question, I really just needed 150 more to practice. And so I think that's where I think I emphasize on the discipline, and it's going to vary for people, right? Like I also, something I wish I did for business school specifically, there are amazing programs that will help like give you the cheat codes for it. I have a lot of friends that went through the MLT program. If anyone here is like an underrepresented minority and looking to apply to business school, they have like a person that will hold you accountable to make sure that you're testing and like that you're practicing and that you get the right GMAT score and that you know how to interview. And like, so that was something that I like maybe wish I had known, because it gives you a community, which I would have appreciated probably. So that is like a hack I wish I had, you know, that I didn't know. So for test taking specifically, I was just very self-aware of like what were my weak spots and what was my test taking strategy, and then really discipline myself around it. Also bring snacks to these tests if you can, because testing hangry is awful and will affect like the way you perform. So I had to take this test twice because the first time I didn't bring snacks and I was thinking about how hungry I was the second half of the exam, and it was awful.
Just to follow up on that, I would say, number one, from my understanding, a lot of LSAT prep companies offer a free trial. So it's really good to just go in there, maybe it's a week, maybe it's a couple of days, but go in and see how the instruction is set up, see how the platform works, and see if you're actually learning that way. If you make a certain income, you can go on LSAC, LSAC, which is the law school admissions something, whatever the C stand for. You can get like a waiver, and a lot of test prep companies also honor that. So they may even give you a free component of their prep materials. Beyond that, I would say once you take advantage of those free trials, from there you probably can see where you actually want to spend your money on. In terms of finding the best prep company for you. I did the LSAT Demon only after I did 7 Sage and Khan Academy and the Power Score Bibles and wasted all this money before I realized that there's a certain way that I learn. And I mean, I wish I was like Diana. I wish I can like know what type of a learner I am, but it took me a while. But then once I figured out what type of learner I was, and once I could, how do I say this? The prep company that I ultimately worked with did what Diana's brain does for her. They broke down every aspect of the question for me, and they were like, you need to be looking at this. This is what your mind should be, thinking of when you approach the questions. And I feel like LSAT Demon worked best for me because they broke it down that way compared to other prep companies where they were just like, A is wrong, obviously. Next question. And I'm like, wait, I chose A. You didn't tell me exactly why it was wrong. So I really feel that LSAT Demon, at least in my mind, I should say, according to how I think, they were really good at making sure that all the students really understood why this was wrong and how we should just anticipate the question. So it's not to say that LSAT is the best program out there, but whatever works best for you and how you understand the material, can you see yourself making progress in this way of studying? If you're not making progress self-studying, maybe you need a class. If you're not making progress in the class, maybe you need a self-study. Maybe you need both. That's also possible. You can combine many programs together. Ultimately, the answer is whatever works best for you, but you need to be thriving in whatever way you're working, because once again, time is of the essence. You can't get the time back. Spending all this time for a program that doesn't work for you, spending all this money for a program that doesn't work for you is not beneficial at all. So yeah, just take advantage of the free programs. I believe there also are some scholarships out there for test programs. So Google those up. There's a scholarship for everything, believe it or not. You just have to go out and find it. But there are a lot of people giving stuff for free. Maybe even your pre-law advisor probably knows some plugs. I believe some colleges even have like LSAT programs that they'll give a discount to their students. So you can try that out. Yeah, ask around, Google, do whatever you need to do to get a
On
good
that
score in
topic,
studying.
Christina, how do you ensure that those scholarships are legitimate?
I don't want to say, oh, it's obvious. I usually just stick to like the reputable companies.
Okay.
Like if they were like a big company like Blueprint or Khan Academy, Seven Sage, LSAT Demon, I usually stuck with those. If it was some random scholarship that I probably couldn't find anymore, I would check their website, check to see if they had any reviews. Usually if they gave a scholarship, they probably were a nonprofit. I went on G-Star or something like that to find like their actual documents. Like, are you an actual nonprofit out here? You just have to do like the legwork to make sure that whoever you're applying to is official. Of course, the basic things, no one should ever ask you to pay for a scholarship. No one should need your social security card. No one should need like certain documents to, apply. Usually these scholarships are something basic like send in an essay or send us your personal statement, or you maybe do an interview. Yeah, I would say there's not much scholarships out there concerning test prep company, concerning LSAT study. So, and usually the ones that are usually tied to the big companies themselves. So I would say there's not much LSAT prep scholarship scams, which is a good thing, but you never know. It's 2023. So yeah, just be on the lookout for anyone, asking for something kind of weird and shady.
Your responses. I do see that we've had some new attendees join. So if you have any questions related to graduate school, whatever it may be, you're welcome to use the raise hand feature, write it in the chat. Is there anyone right now that would like to ask a question? I will say, while we were talking, Diana did throw in the chat a link to M.B.A. prep. So thank you for sharing that, Diana. Do we have any other questions? You can even unmute yourself if you'd like to just go right out with it. Oh, we do have one, Kate. Sorry about that.
Okay, so my question is, it's like, okay. So I'm gonna graduate early. I avoided it as much as I could because I don't want to graduate early, but it's gonna happen. I just had too many AP credits. So in that, I just have decided recently that I want to take a gap year, but I'm unsure like how I would go about looking for jobs like in that gap year. Like I just don't know how I would go about looking for jobs because I don't know exactly like what field I want to go into. Like I'm a psychology major, but like I have no idea which field of psychology, or like I just have no idea.
Anyone have any suggestions on finding maybe a short-term position for just a year's time?
I do.
Okay, go ahead, Manny. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Hi, Kate. First of all, congratulations. I know transitions are always scary. Even as adults, they're scary. So I just want to commend you on being on a platform like this and kind of already being ahead of the game, especially amongst your peers. a lot of people get to a destination, they're like, what do I do next? But you're forecasting, so nice job. I would suggest that you get exposure. And what I mean by exposure is find a 1-year process or 1-year position. You should really be looking for the destination you want. And then when you find that, then you can find a job that turns into like a vehicle. So what does that mean? While the job might not be the most appealing job, you want to find a place that gives you the most options to shadow other people and the most information and the most connections. So I'll give you an example. I'm a surgeon now. I wanted to be a doctor. I took gap years. I ended up taking like 5 gap years. But in those gap years, it was probably the most productive time because I knew I wanted to go into medicine. I liked chemistry. I became a teaching assistant. I taught biology classes. And then at that point, I started teaching at medical school. And then at that point, I met someone who became my mentor, who was a physician. And at that point, while I'm at work, I'm literally getting my own professional development. So does that make sense? You want to find a job with someone who could put you in your next position. So you don't want to just take whatever job. If you want to be in psychology and you like counseling, maybe find a wellness center that works in the community, but be very strategic because these individuals will write your letters of recommendation. If you don't want to work there, they'll get you connected. So I really kind of want you to think about building a network. And when you build a network, that means your first position might not be your landing spot, but you want it to be a conduit for how you're going to really press into where you want to go, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
To build on that, Kate, that's excellent advice. And I was reflecting on some of the like random things that I did at first that I figured out I didn't like doing as a result, which were also very helpful. I think there are things that you could do right now before you graduate to start building that wheelhouse of experiences to say, does this make sense for me? And am I surrounding myself with the right folks that are going to help me get to my next step? And so, thinking about opportunities with like, I don't know, like, can you volunteer in Gainesville someplace tomorrow, right? Can you go work at a school as a counselor, as a volunteer? And then you learn, right? Is the school system, volunteering, counseling a place where I want to go spend my time? Maybe it's yes. And then you say, okay, cool. Post-graduation, maybe I start in the education system. I get surrounded by people who can help me in that space. And then you move forward. Or maybe you're like, that really is not where I want to be. And then it was just a volunteer experience where you got a taste for, is this the space that makes sense for me? And so I think having that, like looking at, you don't have to wait to graduate to start getting some of those experiences. And you can do some of that while you're still in school without having a strong trade-off. If you have the capacity, I think I worked with like startups in Gainesville when I thought I wanted to code. And very quickly I was like, oh my God, this is not what I want to be doing. But I knew I wanted to stay in tech. And so that was still helpful. And I was doing it while I was in school.
I would say utilize your career center. I keep focusing on that because I feel like the purpose of your career center is to provide you with opportunities and network for you, providing you with job fairs and people who are visiting your campus. So be on the lookout for that. Now is the time to start talking to those persons that are in there, letting them know your interest. Maybe they already have someone in mind who's been looking for a student, but nobody ever said that they were interested. So they're just wishing, hoping, and praying that someone shows some interest. Also talking with your professors. I know sometimes it could be a little scary, but they have knowledge of a lot of opportunities because they're grant writing, or they, you might want to be in psychology, but right now they might be looking for a research assistant or something that you can do, in that field. So I would encourage you to definitely speak with your professors and to utilize your career center so that they can help you kind of make a pathway before you graduate.
And Lisa, I know you wanted to respond.
Yeah, I was just gonna add to what everybody else was saying, but Kate, I think another recommendation might be for you to just put a list of 3 to 5 questions together and help answer what within psychology you want to be doing. What field do you want to be focusing on? Is it, different types of, what mental psychology are you focused on? What age brackets are you considering? You know, are you thinking youth? Are you thinking adults? What within psychology? And then that will probably help navigate you to a place. Like Diana mentioned, that it could be any place, but that at least helps get you closer to your North Star if you know what it is that you really want to end up doing, and then you take the necessary steps to get there. But making a list of some of your goals will help you research a company that might fit more of what you're looking to do.
I want to ask, are you planning to stay in Gainesville for your gap year and hoping to get experience there? Would you come back
That's
to
a good
Palm Beach
question.
County?
Honestly, I'm literally open to anywhere, like anywhere in the United States.
I was just curious, you know, because of course, depending on where you want to go, that's going to help you narrow your search a little bit more. But, you know, we have Lisa who has great connections in Palm Beach County and, you know, could always put her feelers out for you if there were something you were trying to look for locally to us.
And I was just going to mention that Lynn University in Boca Raton is in the process of opening and launching a whole entire wellness center on campus for their students. So this is a massive project that's been in the works for a couple of years now. They're in construction right now. So I can definitely reach out to some of our partners over at Lynn and see what options there might be for you. It may just be you shadowing, you know, the new wellness center and going in a couple days a week and just navigating the process and gathering information. I mean, you're at a point where you want to gather information coming out of school. So shadowing opportunities in different places, so you're not locked into one place, might be something you could consider too. So I'll make a note of that, Kate, and I'll send a note over to Lynn to get some more information on timelines for that.
Okay, thank you.
I do want to answer a quick question from Joshua. The question is, when should you apply for the George Snow's graduate school scholarship? Are you able to stack undergraduate scholarships with graduate scholarships? I'll keep this answer brief, but in terms of stacking, if you already have excess money that you haven't used in your undergraduate and you're going immediately to graduate school within 1 year of finishing undergrad, that money can flow over to your graduate program. We'd want you to use that money first, and then you can apply for the graduate program. And then generally speaking, to anyone interested in our graduate school scholarship, it's open January to April every single year. It's on our app. It's on our website. The application is on our website. Sorry about that. It's usually a paper application that you can download, and you can use PDF to write your responses, or you can fill it out by hand and then email a copy to me. But there will be more details on our website and in January when it opens back up again. But if you have further questions about it, you can just email me directly.
Also, something to keep in mind, just really quickly for Joshua, is that it's not like our undergraduate. It's not like you apply one time and that's it. The graduate school scholarship you can apply for every year that you're in graduate school if you haven't received it. So, you know, if the first year you're in grad school, you still have a lot of your undergrad funding left and you have to wait a year, then you can apply, you know, your second year of grad school.
It is a competitive process. So we do encourage you to try again if you don't make it the first time. Do we have other questions? Would anyone like to unmute themselves and jump in? In the meantime, oh, Joshua, did you want to ask a question? No? Okay. Well, so I actually wanted to ask a general question to all of you about affording the cost of a graduate program. Do you have any tips, recommendations? It can be financial aid, scholarships, or other tips that you'd like to provide.
I live by the motto, apply for everything that applies to you. I think Leslie and Shannon has heard this multiple times. You never know what opportunities will be afforded to you if your name is not even in the basket. There's always, financial aid by filling out the FAFSA. Looking at the institutions that you plan on attending. Do they offer graduate scholarships? Do they offer TA positions? Does what do they call it? The graduate school council, do they have scholarship funds? If you are taking out a loan the first year to pay for graduate school, are you making the connections while you're on campus to alleviate that financial burden in the future? So utilizing additional resources, again, your professors, they know where all the money is. I slowly started to find that out. All of a sudden they were having opportunities, and I was like, oh, you don't say. So really looking at your graduate school, looking, even in your local community. I had a lady tell me about a scholarship in a nail salon. She was like, hey, my organization has been trying to give out a scholarship to students, but no one's applying. Do you go to school? And I was like, yes, I go to school. So just looking in your local area and seeing if they are offering scholarships to graduate students, and some of those places might be like a local, the city itself, or a nonprofit, or a for-profit organization that with a specific major, they're looking to provide scholarship opportunities. Also, different associations, people often leave off, but there are scholarship opportunities for them as well. So thinking about how you're going to pay for graduate school is definitely, it can be a headache. But also just being aware that if you do get accepted and you are taking out loans, you do not have to take the full amount. And you can utilize your university to find some of those opportunities.
I would only add that you should have a plan, and a plan that makes sense and that you understand post graduation. So I was crazy about this because it was an insane amount of money that I needed to take out to go to school. And I was like, this is the type of job that I need to expect to have post M.B.A. This is how much my monthly cash flow has to be. This is when I want to pay off my debt. So I had a very clear path for how much money I actually needed and what type of role I needed to aspire to post M.B.A. And so I wanted to make sure that what I was getting myself into when I looked at the other end of the program was actually achievable. So that was one thing. Have a clear plan for what your postgraduate program life looks like when you think about the debt to income ratio. The other thing is I don't know if this is like normal, but I negotiated with admissions when they offered me an X amount scholarship. And I was like, nope, I'm not going to school unless you give me more. And they were like, no, and I knew that I was a good candidate, and I was just like, I really want to go to school here. Like, what can you do for me? And so I negotiated a higher scholarship with the admissions person on the phone before accepting. And so I don't know if people even do that, but I think it's similar to what Inita said about like, there are hidden opportunities here that if you just like talk about and show your, what you bring to the table, they will uncover, right? And so I think those two things were things that I didn't expect as I was thinking through my financial plan.
All right. Do we have any other questions?
I would like to piggyback off of Diana. Leverage is huge. There is more than one graduate program. There is more than one way to accomplish your goal. And for me personally, when applying for medical school, when I actually got my scholarship offer, I held my acceptance, but I went on other visits. And once my medical school found out that I was going to other schools and getting offered there, they doubled the amount of scholarships they were willing to offer me. So use your leverage. Do not have, oh my God, this is my dream school because they're a college football team, or oh my God, this is where I want to live. I really want to challenge you to kind of think ahead. What is the 30 or 40-year-old version of you going to really value? And try to really encapsulate that when you're making your decision. If your school is $60,000 a year and you could do it for $10,000 a year at a less reputable school, whatever that means, reputable, I can guarantee you no hiring agent is going to hire someone because of the name of their school. And I'm just going to pause there. And I hope every person that's young listens. I don't care if you go to Jim Bob's University, you're going to have professional skills. You're going to have to hustle. And please do not go to the most expensive option just because it sounds cool on paper. There are many people who owe hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars who don't have a job because someone told them, oh my God, you got to go to the #1 ranked. I'm going to give one last story and it's 30 seconds. My friend from high school turned down a $180,000 scholarship to go to the #1 engineering school in the country. And she, to go to the #2, engineer school. And she wanted to go to the #1 engineering school. She went there with no scholarship money. Her financial debt burden was enormous because I don't want to go to #2. I want to go to #1. Now, I would like every young person to ask me, what does the 30-plus-year-old version of that person say about it today? They regret it. So please don't make emotional decisions. Please listen to Diana and make a financial decision because money matters. I don't care how much these people tell you it doesn't. It matters. And I'm getting off my soapbox. Lastly, become a graduate teaching assistant. They paid me, before I got in medical school, they paid me to teach the grad program. I got like $200 a week, which is a lot of money when you have no money. And then they paid my tuition. So I ended up getting 2 master's degrees because it was paid. So, there's plenty of money out there. Please, 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 please hustle. You can do this.
Thank you, Manny. Okay, great. We are getting towards the end of our time here. Was there anyone who would like to ask one more question? Let's see here. I don't see any more in the chat, but I always like to end these types of panels just with a general question for each of you. What is something you wish you had known that you know now that you've gone through graduate school? What do you wish you would have known prior to that you know now?
How humbling the experience was going to be and how the people that you end up meeting as part of your program are like a disproportionate value add than what I had in my head it was going to be. I was so driven by like academics and like wanting to learn and all of this. And I sat in like the finance courses at the beginning and I was like, oh my God, I am not smart enough for this. So it was a very humbling experience at the beginning. And now, I'm 2 years out of grad school and I'm going to like weddings of people that I didn't know 3 years ago, 4 years ago, right? And so like the network of and the sort of the benefit that you get, I think, by surrounding yourself with people who are like similar minded, similar interests, who share these like maybe more niche passions, for me it was something I didn't expect to value as much as I do now in retrospect.
Thank you.
I think for me, because my doctorate program was a cohort program and it was an inaugural program for USF, that I had to learn how to accept being okay with being the only person that looked like me. That was very, very, very difficult. I always told myself, if not me, then who? Who's going to be there to share the experience, to challenge, to shake the table, to provide insight. And so I knew that I was okay with having conversations, but I realized that I wasn't okay with having the difficult conversations, with being the only person in the room and really being open to work on projects. I like to work by myself. I do not like group projects. I know that if I have to do it, I'm going to get it done. But really being open to working on group projects really changed the trajectory of my grad school experience. And I was able to work on a really big project for the university. And I met the associate dean of the college. She became my dissertation committee chair, offering me opportunities to publish. So now I'm a published author. I'm looking at getting it into conferences that I had no idea about. So really challenging yourself to step outside of the box, be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Thank you.
For me, I was sitting here struggling trying to answer that question because I'm like, oh, I haven't finished graduate school. I don't know what I wish I would have known. I would have to say, if I could go back to the start of college, I probably would have gotten out of my shell more in terms of gaining leadership opportunities. I like to think that I am a really good follower. I'm a servant at heart. I love to help. I love to assist. And usually those people are not the ones stepping out and saying, I'm going to take charge. And it's not an issue right now, but what I understand being a lawyer is, even if you're an assistant attorney, if you are just, you may not be the only attorney in the room, everyone looks to you as the leader. So they are expecting you to speak up a lot more than someone who may be working in the background. And I feel like I'm making up for that now. Like, I'm volunteering for clinics and I'm doing intake. And even though I'm just a law student, the person on the other end of the line has a lot of faith in me and trying to give them the best material, give them the best information. And I'm feeling so uncomfortable. How Dr. Anita mentioned, like, be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I feel because I don't have much leadership experience, I have a lot of volunteer experience, but not in the sense of I was the one people usually went to if they had a question. So I would say that I probably would have went back in time, just got out my shell a lot more, tried to lead someone. But thankfully, I just started law school, so I have plenty of time to figure it out. I have plenty of time. I'm still young-ish. I'm only 25. Yeah, I'm young. So I have plenty of time to figure it out, to gain more leadership experience, especially before I become an attorney and all eyes are on me and people place a lot of faith in me. Ooh, that sounds scary. But I'll be fine.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for all of your advice. Oh, go ahead, Manny. I'm so sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm like, these are such great comments. I promise to be brief. Christina, what you just said, I would like to piggyback on that. Professional school, graduate school is more than a test. Up until that point, the test number, the percentage was everything. But what you just mentioned and what others are mentioning are the soft skills, the professional skills. At the end of the day, comparison is the thief of joy. Someone's always going to have an A+++++, and oh, you only got an 89, I got a 99. But it's really an opportunity to mature and get out of the box. Right now, as a doctor, if I'm mean or if I don't communicate well or if I don't listen, no one cares about how much you know. No one cares that you stayed up all night for years and years and years. Did you make someone feel better? Did you listen to them? Everyone's impressive in graduate school. So really humbling yourself. This is what I tell all my mentees, humbling yourself to ask questions, humbling yourself to grow, and then kind of learning grit. I think it cannot be stated enough that you aren't going to be perfect at everything. So you have to be okay with failure. You have to be able to adapt. You have to be able to adjust and grow. Don't be Mr. or Mrs. Perfect, goody two shoes, everything's perfect. Challenge yourself and be okay with being yourself. I might not get straight A's. You might get straight C's, but guess what? You're going to grow and you're going to have to go out and get a job. And life is not a multiple choice question exam. So you have to be okay with growth when you go into grad school. And I think that's the best piece of advice I can give to any young person who's now going to have to transition from student mind to professional contributor to society, thinking outside of the box, leadership, like you just said, Christina. So thanks.
Thank you so much. That was useful. Yeah. And I mean, like you said, like struggle is part of the growth, right? So you have to go through it to get ahead. So that is our time. I want to thank each of you for joining tonight. I really appreciate you all. Christina, Diana, Dr. Anita, and as well our surprise guest, Manny. So the session is recorded, as you all saw, but we'll be posting it later on in case any of you want to go back and watch it or share it with anyone that you happen to know that could benefit from the information. But other than that, thank you for joining tonight, and I hope you have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.